The first 3 weeks of the eruption here in Hawaii, crazy things would happen in the middle of the night. A new fissure would open up and it would threaten a new neighborhood. Thousands of people are evacuated from their homes. I started the Hawaii Tracker Facebook group to help people understand what's going on and get their questions answered.
Hey, how's it going? We're live. This is Fissure 20.
We had hundreds of people all throughout the neighborhoods sending in videos, articles, and images. We spend a lot of time making sure the accurate information gets out.
This is live. There's still lava moving.
They weren't just sharing a story, they were helping their neighbor. If a family was being evacuated, a group would just jump in and help out. So it was huge. They were watching out for each other.
Hello everybody, thank you for coming. Thank you for the support from everybody.
As we go through this, we're growing closer together as a community. When tragedies like this strike, you really realize how much you need each other.
Aloha everyone, I'm geologist Philip Ong, here with Mr. Dane DuPont, HawaiiTracker.com, bringing you guys another Kilauea volcano update. Today is Thursday, April 28th, 2022, and we are 1 day shy. Tomorrow marks 7 months of this newest Kilauea summit eruption. 7 months going strong, going steady. We're settled into a typical pattern of activity now, not a whole lot of changes from last week. Still some cool things to see, some new views, and we'll kind of step through it all with you guys here. Dane will be monitoring the chat, leading conversation on chat, collecting questions there, answering what he can, and throwing some into our live discussion here as we go. Let him know if you have any issues with our audio or video as usual. And otherwise, we'll get into it here. Starting off showing you guys a little clip of a newest USGS video released. Was actually from the V1 camera when it was zoomed into this, what they're calling an embayment, the southeast embayment of that active lava lake there. So pretty cool stuff. We'll come back around to this a little bit later. This is actually like in live time, right? So it's not a time lapse. It's not sped up. It's just a regular speed here. So you really can see the lava in this main lake here in the bottom of the screen, right in here. Yeah, right through here, and flowing through that little gap right there, really roiling and churning down here in a slower pit, and draining down underneath it somewhere, going underneath this other crust. So we'll talk about that here, but I thought this would be the best view to open up our sharing with you guys today. So mahalo you guys for joining us. If you are new here, please like, share, and subscribe. We will recap our 7-month typical activity on Kilauea here, starting with looking at the last week in particular. So the last week in Kilauea, here is the repositioned V1 camera. So it's now zoomed into that main surface of the lava lake, the main active lava lake. And I've extended it a little bit, going back to be almost the last 2 weeks here. So we can really see the pattern of lava within the main lava lake separately as a first thing today. And what you can tell over the last 2 weeks here is the lava level has varied. You can see obviously the night and daytime. But more importantly is to notice is the fullness of the lake, right? You can see the upper edge of it here, and the lava level drops down and it comes up, and it drops down and it comes up, and at no point does it disappear the entire way. And that's really the point here, that lava has been persistent on the surface here this entire time. The embayment is visible here in the top of the top center of this view here. And you can see it going back, if I zoom into it here, the last couple of weeks. We actually had a little archway that formed and collapsed, and then the lava levels can drop and rise simultaneously, or occasionally you'll see the dropping occurring faster in this far section, and then you have the rapids forming through there. Just saw that little preview here. So that's the pattern. Lava has always been in there. The last few weeks, that's our new normal, is the lava levels will rise and fall based on the pressure of the magma underground, underneath the crust under here, in a magma network, supply network, whether that's something you think of as a magma chamber or a whole series of network of cracks and storage areas in there. So all of that underground is reflected in the surface here by the rising and falling of this lava lake. Unlike the pauses a few months ago, there's no point in time when lava stops flowing on the surface altogether. Okay, so that's the new view of the V1 camera. The view we had beginning last week was this one, so I'll just play this over the last week. Well, not quite the last week, or maybe in the last couple of days since the camera got zoomed in a little more. But in contrast to last week where we had a similar view as this, we see most of the activity is still centered around that active lake. We see our west vent complex over here. And last week we saw lots of lava coming from these areas, spilling out all directions, all over the place, all through here, all this whole bottom right part of the image here, but not so much this week. You do see glow from these persistent spots. The lava level is seen to rise in the pit, like this west pond vent that I've been calling it right in here. If I can zoom in a little more. Right there, it seems to rise and fall, corresponding with the lava in the main pit as well, the main active lake. And we see glowing spots from this spillway that's now all crusted over, that connects the lava underground from here to there. We see glowing spots coming from these cones in the west vent complex over here. See a little bit of a glowing pond, perhaps, right? Like a little hard to call it a puddle because these things are so big, and it's hard to really judge scale from this far away, right? In the past, we've seen that these cones are in the order of 40, 50 feet tall, something like that. That's really hard to gauge from here, right? But I would try to imagine that as at least a 3-story building, something like that. So I call it like a puddle, right? But it's really more like a pond, like an area where the lava is pooled here and is maybe crusted over. And some of these, it seems like it's where the lava has flowed out from before and it's made filled in a depression. But other areas, like if I zoom it out back again and scroll down to this area right down in here, the bottom in this westernmost part of the vent, we actually a week ago had a little pit in there. So it seems like almost like it's forming a new little vent there. And it also has a lava pad that rises up and blocks that plug there in sync with the lava rising in the other parts of the crater. Pretty cool to see that. But overall, fairly quiet over here. There are occasionally other flows you see oozing up around the perimeter, but this camera and this view is not the one to get the best view of that. So we will move on to show you guys. This is the B1 camera. So we're looking now across from the other side of the crater. So all that lava lake is in a far background back over here. And you can see now ooze up flows along this south perimeter here and over here. And this is the east perimeter and bringing more northeast kind of in this area back over here. Lots of little flows all through there. Some of them are really close to the camera, so you can see them nice and animated right here, but other ones are farther away, but they're still active down by that down drop block over here, for example. Right in there. That's the pattern, that's been the pattern, and that's because as the lava is coming in, only a small amount is circulating in that active lake area. I would estimate 2%-ish based on the USGS numbers recently. The rest of it's going underneath the crust, and even lava that's going into that active lake is circulating back down underneath this crust also. So you have a core that's buoyant, that's somewhere in here, and it keeps rising, and lava will then ooze out all the edges and fill in that moat, so to speak, on the outside, right? That's been the long-term pattern here. So you get the persistent lake, and you get these kind of scattered lava flows across everywhere on the hardened crater floor. And those flows can be quite large, much larger than the lake itself, but they're not persistent all the time. Sometimes you see a whole bunch all over the place all at one time. Sometimes you don't see hardly any at all. It just depends on the day and the pressure on the ground there. So the big picture, here's a KW camera. This is the camera from that upper west rim that actually takes in the whole caldera without having any cropping anywhere. So I can zoom it in a little bit for you guys. You can see really the pattern of where the ooze ups occur. Here's the opposite point of view. So we're back looking from the west. This is our view that we're looking. The V1 camera is a similar view like this. The B1 camera is that we just saw previous to now was back over here pointing back in our direction. We're looking up close at these. And really just want to make sure that all these other edges off the camera over here, for example, are being documented as well. Lots of ooze ups all around the edges, all around. But pretty typical, nothing unusual worth mentioning there. Same view as that KW camera in infrared is our F1 camera. Thermal, I should say, right? I don't know why I always say it that way, but here is our main circulating active surface. There's the ooze up flows on the back side of the crater, eastern part of the crater. Here's a closer one over here. And this is just the last week, once again, as well. Right? So you see that first part of the week fairly quiet, and then coming back up. And that's partly because there was a deflation-inflation event early on last week. And as we speak now, we have another one coming on. Or not coming on, we're in the middle of it now, and we'll out of it in a couple of days here. So that's the pattern of the last week, and before I move on from this, I'm just going to grab it and I'm just going to yank it real quick back and forth. We try to accentuate here the fact that even over the last week, there's a visible rise of the crater, right? You can see this darker area in the middle right through here, and these glowing cracks on the edge there, and you can see that part rises relative to the edges of the crater. And you can see relatively little lava cracking through there. So it's mostly cracking around the edges of that thing and coming out on that perimeter there. And that's the pattern. And just to commemorate this 7-month milestone here, we'll play from the very beginning of this eruption, all 7 months, the pattern of the lava filling in the crater, crusting over for the most part, still swelling underneath that crust, lifting it up. The main active lake rising and contracting, closing in. It hasn't closed in all the way yet, but you can imagine that would be coming in the months ahead. All right. Let's see here. A couple questions coming through here. Yeah, we've had a couple questions about the scale of what you guys see here. It's hard to really get the scale on here. Partly it's because we don't have any more recent measurements from USGS that we can superimpose, but you could use some of the old ones. We just haven't quite got around to it. We're using the same measures of the estimates of the height of the cone of 40, 50 feet more. Yeah, so it's a huge area. Over 200 acres, the entire crater floor you guys see on the screen here.
There is one question from Carl about lava tubes. So
Great,
maybe
yeah.
you could explain the process of lava tubes and maybe what is underneath the top of the surface of that lava lake that we see there.
Yes, I mean, very briefly, like a lava tube is essentially like a crusted over surface flow, and that's the key distinction. It's a surface, it forms from the surface from the top down. Not like a river in the wintertime that freezes on its surface, layer of ice, but still have flowing water underneath it, right? The difference being that once that upper rock form hardens as a crust, then it usually stays that way. There's no volcanic spring, right? So it's not quite what's happening, what you see in this image right here, right? There could be surface flows that make lava tubes on the surface, but mostly what we're seeing is this injection underneath all that whole area into whatever network is down there. And I believe there are pathways that move the magma from that upwelling zone underneath the center through here out towards the perimeter, right? It seems like there must be some path that goes off that way, and go back to my previous, some path that goes off that way, some that goes off that way, and some that goes off that way, for example. But I wouldn't call those lava tubes because they're not formed in that same kind of surface way, right? And we really don't know what it looks like under there. So there is some gray zone, and we could discuss it further, right? But I myself, hearing lava tube, think of as a surface feature that you'd see probably like outside the crater area, right? Where it's not ponding per se, but actually flowing outwards in a way. And even here, I mean, it helps me clarify this point, right? Even though we don't see red on this image all the way over here, the lava is going underneath this crust all the way across this entire thing through here. And so it really is injecting and then lifting that whole thing up. Right, so okay, we'll mix in some more questions as we go along, but let me keep going on the update here. Our most current view of the F1 camera, let me make sure we reload it to true. 17:14, 5 minutes ago here, and you can see a little bit of rim here, so the lava level is dropping, but it's still active within the pit there. Right? Still some remnants of the ooze up flows, both in the northwest, in the north, and in the east over here. We have additional imagery, so here is photos from the USGS of what that area looks like. In the daytime, it has that silvery looking crust, right? This is not very thick. We're talking about a few millimeters thick kind of thing, you know, fractions of an inch. Enough that at nighttime you see the lava brightness glowing through that crust, and then brightest in the cracks in the crust as well. But in the daytime, you only see it where it's exposed, right? So in this image right here, if we blow it up a little bit, you can see the where lava is moving a little slower. You see the crust, and you can see interesting patterns we can talk about. But also that gap where it's plunging into that embayment, and then no crust on the surface there because it's churning too fast. So zooming out from that, a wider view, similar to what we saw from that KW camera, but better image here, showing that full extent of the lava and lava right now. Right, so here is our active lava lake area is just that much. The entire hardened crater floor with lava underneath it is that much. Right through there. There, yeah. And we're all within this crater right through here right now. That's the inner crater. Then there is a next level crater. We call that down drop block. That's a crater that from this view goes over here. That's the edge of it there. And the outer caldera wall is way up here. Right? And I say that because I'm going to switch now to show you guys the park map as we talk about viewing, right? So from this point of view, the lava lake is just a little pit right in here. The crust with all the lava is all within here. The down drop block. And so the inner pit is here. Down drop block pit is this one. And then the main caldera you see is actually all around there. So really it's got nowhere to spill out of for a long time still. It's inside of various concentric circles there. And the most expansive viewing is Kanikakoi still overlook vicinity right around here. Views going off this way, but there are still views. You hear more and more views from the east side, and still views from the north side as well. Right, of course, depends of where you are, what exactly you can see, and you can't see everything from everywhere, no matter what. So, focusing more briefly today on the viewing, but as usual, want to recap what you guys are able to see. And we'll start off with video from Janice Way, volunteer National Park photographer, and just a view, wide-angle view in Kīlauea yesterday. See at dawn there, the glow from the lava lake within that main pit. Right there, some little other flows to the side, right over there. Put it on, let's close that. We'll come back to our recent study contributors, two pineapples. Thank you guys, and Anna. And we will play a little excerpt here of what they've streamed. They've had 3 streams in the last week. The weather has been challenging sometimes, but they're trooping up there and putting out great content. So here is a view a couple days ago, 4 days ago. Here's that main embayment zone right there. So the lava is flowing from that main lake into the embayment from a reverse angle, and you can see an area where, as it's going through that channel, there's a gas bubbling up zone right here, spattering, and it's making this little cone on the side. It's pretty cool to see there. Aloe once again. Pineapple is sharing this, and yeah, you guys who want to see hours and hours and hours of this stuff pretty regularly nowadays, go check out their YouTube channel, Pineapples. Okay, zooming in a little bit more, so now we're kind of at that right end of that embayment here. Lava drains down somewhere in there, and the idea is that as the lava is going down, the gases essentially come separate from the lava that's trying to drop down. The gases come back up, and it bubbles up and causes a spattering. And now I sped it up. We've panned all the way to the northeast part of the crater, and this is a little breakout, one of these little ooze flows that sped up a lot, so you can kind of just see the progression of how the flow might look over the course of an hour or more. Right, you can't quite see the bottom where this flow is going because there is still that crater in a way here in the foreground you can't quite see past, and so you can't see everything everywhere, but quite a lot to see. And you guys listen to these guys to the stream this morning. They're looking to the left, or looking to the right, or looking to the left. It's hard to know where to look. There's so much to see everywhere. So shout out to you guys once again. Thank you. I will catch up with you up at the Overlook, and we'll talk story online Tuesday. All right. We have used the S1 camera from HVO USGS before as a proxy for that viewing from that area, so we'll continue to do that once again. Here is the last week S1 camera. The view, as you saw, is not exactly the same here, right? We were looking a little bit more from this angle, and so you can see that spattering zone right in here, and there's that little pathway in the embayment. But big picture first, there's our active lake, there's our West Vent complex over here. We see some ooze ups occurring here and here. There's some glowing spots east of the central island right through here. And all that. One other just note to point out right now is the camera does shift slightly. That same day, the 26th, they were moving several cameras around. So we were having an issue a couple weeks ago where we couldn't see off the edge of the camera off this way. So the camera actually steps a little bit to the left there. And there's a little bit of a shift there just to make it documented for ourselves. And so now let me zoom in to the main lake area. And you see that same view as we saw from before, steady lava across the whole surface and then pouring down that pit. So here we can actually see lava going through that little gap and draining into that pit there, right there. You saw that sequence. We featured this before several times. It's still doing it. But the cool thing is that we actually have some reverse angle views now, right? So here's an image taken by the USGS from that western rim of that same area, the embayment and pit. And one thing I wanted to point out that's been visible but I haven't pointed out yet is you can notice the height of exposed rim here inside the main active lake is about yay much on our visual here. And if I pan it over without changing the scale here, you see that in this pit where it's flowing into, it's quite a bit more, right? That gives you an idea of the relative depth, knowing that these things have actually been level across before, as shown by the time lapses we just showed. So there's the still image. Here's a video we opened up our show with today. Play it once again because it's pretty cool to see that real-time view. Lava pouring in there. Seen a note. This little slope there, right? This little scissoring goes from being not as tall to see it kind of ramps down and all the way in there. It's pretty cool to see. We can't see the inside of this pit from the overlooks anywhere else yet that I can. Right, so we've seen lava bubbling, and here's that spattering zone. Here's that little pit, the little corner we're pointing out from 2 pineapples. We've seen overflows from this area. We've seen spattering over here, but more spatter cones here and here. Those are the ones that we saw in the last 2 pineapples video. And lava level was much higher earlier this morning, right in here. So it is changing up and down quite a bit. This little clip comes from this longer video from USGS here. They do mention in our captions the same thing I've been mentioning to you guys, that it does appear the lava is draining out of that embayment pit there. The wider view here in real time. And we'll zoom in a little bit for you guys. Interesting to see in real time how much gas is actually venting from, right? It's something we always looks impressive on our sped up time lapses, but even in real time, you can see the gas just billow steadily all the time. See other areas of discoloration. Lava is going down into here and it's diving underneath the crust, right? So it's going underneath that area somewhere, and where, who exactly knows? But as we discussed those other pathways, we see discoloration on the surface here and here, so it wouldn't be unreasonable to imagine the lava is going down into some passageway here that goes under the crust off in that direction like that. Speculation there, but that's the kind of pattern you look for.
Right, the discoloration on the surface.
Yeah, exactly.
We saw that after 2018, you remember, yeah?
Yeah.
Lots of discoloration at the hot spots.
Yeah. So the discoloration comes from the gas, and the gas, it kind of depends what kind of discoloration, right? You can have remnant gas, you can have gas from steam from a big rainstorm, but when you start seeing the sulfur deposits, the sulfur coming from the magma itself, and you can see it's building over months and months and months and months, then it tells you there must be fresh magma coming in to actually drive the gas, right? To be the source for the gas. Just interesting discoloration pattern. Okay, so just a reminder to everyone and myself to mention that we're getting all this data from the USGS HVO, Hawaiian Volcano Observatory. So mahalo, everything courtesy due to them. Not a whole lot of changes in the last week. I did want to mention that because this pattern of pauses has now ended, right? We're having variation, but no pauses per se. As of last week Friday was the final afternoon status update that we got from the USGS that they started putting out. And they say, unless conditions significantly change in the future. So essentially they're saying that there's no real need to keep putting out daily updates in the afternoon and say there's still going to be lava at the surface because that's how it's been unchanging. So little footnote there on that. Mahalo once again to the USGS for all the hard work you guys do, all the data you make publicly available. And we could always use more. Mahalo. USGS data, here it is. We'll start with summit lava depth. This is a big picture back from 7 months ago until now. Big rise at the beginning and fairly steady rise since then. You can ignore some of these other details for now. Right? Zooming in quite a bit for the last week, you can see a fairly steady rise. 342 at the meters above sea level elevation here at the beginning of the week, and 346, that's 4 meters elevation gain over the last week where the laser is pointing, which is a good amount, right? Now, we don't always have that much, but it seems like it goes faster and slower and faster and slower, so we'll look at that here shortly. And you can see that over the last week, we've had 2 deflation-inflation events, one that began right after our broadcast last week and lasted not quite a day, came back up, and it's been steady most of the week. Actually was almost surging this morning prior to dropping back down, which is where we are now. Right here at the bottom. Expect the same pattern. It should come back up and do the same thing again, unless something changes, right? But it's been so steady, no cause to believe it will do something different. Okay. Zoom out to the 1 month time frame here. This is the lava depth for 1 month. And now you start to see a little bit more interesting pattern. We discussed this a little bit last week, but here over the this previous week, it's been pretty steady. Week before that was a little flatter. The week before that was a little more steady. The week before that was a little flatter. Before that it was a little more steady. So you're seeing a little bit of this stepping pattern now, right? And you can see that there's a little bit of a correlation. This flat part right here corresponds to this deflation-inflation event that occurs here, right? But sometimes not as much, right? So this is where we thought that perhaps lava is lifting that central core and then sprawling out, and then lifting and spreading, and lifting and spreading. So if last week was more spreading, this week was more lifting. Kind of how I'm conveying this today. So interesting, nothing really alarming there. Pattern was something that we're considering affecting the SO2 signal as well. So here's our 1 month SO2 values integrated across the whole volcano right there. And you can see that we had this decreasing pattern. Sorry, I'm back on. So decreasing pattern down here during the steady flatness of the tilt, right, which is our proxy for ground pressure. And then during our deflation-inflation events, you expect to have these lower values. So that's all good here. And as expected, the values came back up, actually a little bit higher yesterday afternoon, presumably just prior to the onset of this deflation event right here. So corresponding to those little surges and extra breakouts we're seeing around. So this is the integrated across the whole volcano, we believe. We also have spot measurements, and you can see that from the spot measurements, the one spot in the closed area at Sand Hill, depending on the wind, the emissions, all those variables, you can have more variable spikes of gas in the area, right? And we can see that just at a glance, there was a little bit higher spikes later in the week corresponding to these higher values coming back here as well. So interesting to note, but really this is the better graph to use as a full-on measure. This is more like of an example of what it might be like if you were somewhere nearby, in this case, downwind in a closed area. Nothing to worry about as far as people to overlook, as we'll cover here shortly. There is a national park air quality page. Everything is in the green. Let's see if I can reload it and get it to give me a wind direction. Okay, there we go. There's the wind direction, the plume blowing off that way. So that station I just showed you guys, Sand Hill, is kind of over here. The viewing area is basically over here, and all around on the east side, upwind side for the most. Sometimes it is slack winds. You do get some gases, but it hasn't been terrible that I've heard for most people there. Last week we did ask for some of the people who are viewing, and please continue if you guys are in the area, local residents, and you have experience with the gas. Please post a comment. Let us know what it's like for you guys. You know, we had someone from Volcano share. Maybe you can find that for me, Dane, and we can read it in a few minutes. But someone in Volcano talking about how the VOG really does still come through, and it is still an issue, and it is still noticeable and all of that.
Yeah, we do have something here that question about that kind of for you. Lisa on Facebook asks, I will be staying at KMC the last week in October. I have lung and esophagus issues and will need the best protection from the toxic fumes if the volcano is still erupting. I need advice on the best mask for the trip, and I'm not sure if I could use what I should use for COVID is the right thing. Hope to get some advice from you and Philip. So you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah.
Or I could talk about it a little bit too.
You go first.
All right. So one thing we learned in 2018 was that the N95 masks are really good for particulate matter, but they're not going to do anything for the SO2. For the SO2, you need to step it up if that's the gases that are going to give you issues. You'd want to get something like a 3M, the 6000 series filters. It's the pink ones, right? They're the pink filters for the 3M respirators, the half-face respirators. Those are the good ones. I'm not sure if you'll need it, but last time I was at KMC, I couldn't even smell the thing, and I have asthma as well. So I mean, sometimes, but we've also learned in 2018 that some people are affected by the gases much, much differently than others, even though you might not think so. Anything you want to expand upon on that?
Yeah, I think that's a great start. Yeah, as far as the masks, yeah, I mean, 3M is one brand. There's another brand as well.
Yeah, there's the pink ones though.
Depending on the
I think.
brand, you get different colors of
Right.
cartridges. What you want to look on your cartridge is that your cartridge will filter SO2 in particular. Right?
Right.
That was what was important. But that's really like being extra careful having that on hand because, as Dane says, no one's had to use a gas mask, even asthmatics, at KMC since 2018, I would imagine. Right? But if you're going to be extra prepared, you could have that.
All right.
Most important is just have your inhaler with you all the time, right?
Yeah.
Another point: October is a good time because KMC is right there. That's the thing. It's very close, and so if there is no wind, then the gas can kind of build up in a crater and kind of start flooding the areas immediately around a crater, which KMC is in that area. But that's a lot less likely in a summertime. That's a wintertime phenomenon for the most part. Usually overnight in the winter when you'd be indoors anyways, right? So that's something to be aware of, but would not expect it. So that's basically it. You might Alicia talk to KMC directly, right? And just touch base with them and let them know. Then maybe they have something else that they can help with.
Yep. Definitely. All right. Continue on.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, as we're talking about the gases here, I did want to let's see. We'll look first at this VMAP, right? The VOG mapping project from Manoa, weather.hawaii.edu, is using a combination of the gas emission rate, which most recently was 4282 tons per day over here, and the current weather conditions to then forecast a VOG dispersal pattern, right? And VOG is two things. It's both the raw SO2 that comes out as the primitive gas, and then it reacts with the sunlight and moisture in the air and forms particulates that are SO4 compounds. It's two different ways of saying, but it's kind of the same impact, right? Or you can have further impacts SO4 further away depending on the intensity of the plume and how far it drifts and all that. This map is also showing probability of exceedance here, which has got this red scale, which is the one I prefer to show you guys. And we're showing moderate threshold. There are different thresholds. You can put unhealthy or hazardous if you're really worried about how bad it might actually get. And you can also change it from probability to concentration. And this is more of a green or purple color map. I don't like this one as much because I think it could be confused for like a radar weather kind of thing. So it's similar in that way, but it's maybe a little too confusing without explanation, so I usually put on this red one here. In any case, this is all the current mapping project, and I spent a little extra time today because I'm going to jump into Volcano Watch real quick here. Volcano Watch this week. What do VOG and wildfire smoke plumes have in common? Knowledge sharing here. So this is something that is it posted on hawaiitracker.com already, Dane? Or if not, I'm sure will be soon.
It will be soon.
Will be soon. And you can see here's that VOG map panel that we just looked at, and they go and describe all different effects of the fog, and comparisons to wildfires. Wildfires usually are a little smaller, but in recent decades we've had some really big wildfires, and so. Long story short, that has allowed the volcano VOG researchers to use wildfire particulate dispersal modeling in their models as well. And they basically another way to say it is the wildfire models are being used in the VOG models and are making the VOG models better. The VOG model we just looked at is already incorporating. So. VMAP scientists have been able to incorporate a new dynamic plume rise approach in their VOG forecasts, resulting in more accurate air quality predictions for the state of Hawaii. Go ahead, Dane.
Well, I was just going to add that there's a lot more money behind being able to track the particulates and wildfires because they're so common on the mainland as opposed to the volcanoes. So it's really good to have something that we can grab onto and apply and have it work. Where they already have all the funding and stuff like that and put in the legwork on the thing.
Yeah, and it may sound like it's not that hard to do, right? But what it comes down to is that every different layer of the atmosphere has winds going in different directions. So you really need to have some pretty good handle on what's coming up to know at what height, what elevation it'll stop rising, become neutrally buoyant, and what they call inject into the atmosphere at that elevation. And it's the winds at that elevation that matter. So if you get the elevation wrong, you go a little too high, you get wrong winds, it might go completely opposite direction, or too low, completely opposite direction. And that's why it really matters in there. So that's probably enough about that. I don't want to go too deep into the volcano watch, but it does tie into our discussion of VOG forecasting today. I wanted to mention it right here at this point in time. We'll wrap it up with other signals here, long-term signals. GPS here is not a whole lot to note in a long-term trend. It's fairly similar. If I zoom it way in, this is across the caldera at the summit. You see some of these variations down and up and down and up, right? And so this is similar to what we're seeing a little bit with that pattern of filling and sprawling and filling and sprawling a little bit, maybe. Although this is a longer-term plot here. This is going on longer. So this may also be reflecting that pattern of more deflation-inflation events that we've seen over the last few months as well, which we saw that previously with eruption last year as well. On the East Rift Zone at Pu'o'o, this is distance across the East Rift Zone. The long-term trend hasn't changed, and all those short-term variations like we saw here or here have all corrected themselves, and it's all been smaller noise, smaller adjustments within the long-term trend. So nothing to talk about there, really. Oh. Earthquakes, not a lot there either. Over the last year on Kilauea, you can see we've had a couple of spikes recently. Nothing to speak of, really. No change from the normal for the last month. We talked about these earthquakes last week, Pahala region, but really, if anything, a little quieter than usual on Kilauea for the second week in a row here. Quiet once again. Not really anything worth seeing there. Okay, so let's go to the earthquake map. There it is. There is a pattern pretty similar to the last couple of weeks. No huge concentrations anywhere that are unusual. Pahala cluster is still there. Looking at our largest magnitudes this week, we're up at 2.8 as our largest one, so really not nearly as big as the ones last week, and really don't have to go into any detail of any of these, I don't think, today. Still similar around Mauna Loa, but if we jump quickly, look at Mauna Loa, earthquake rates at Mauna Loa over the last year have also remained pretty steady. Nothing to talk about there. There is earthquakes over the last week near the summit. Still happening. Nothing alarming about the rates. And we look at the distance across the caldera of Mauna Loa, and some variation, but kind of unchanging for the most part within the noise there for the last 6 months. So that's most of what we have here. One final note to mention. This also will be posted on hawaiitracker.com in the next day or two here, because the National Park is featuring a 1942 eruption in Mauna Loa that began on April 26th, 1942, so 2 days and 80 years ago. There's a video on there, a short description. We've done other write-ups on this before, so I think Dana's going to compile it all for you guys and put up a post for you guys to check that out if you want a little more exploration of Mauna Loa 80 years ago. Otherwise, we'll circle back around to this at some point in time. This is the famous secret eruption that occurred during World War II that was hush-hushed.
Yeah. There's a lot to talk about on that one. I did do a post on it. Might be worth making into a video. We'll maybe, if anybody's interested in that, we'll get that together. It's interesting to get all this footage from then because really didn't have any. Being from the secret eruption, you kind of had eruptions after it, but all we really had was photos of that event that I've seen.
Yeah, so it's probably stuff like this where there's probably more that exists than is available, especially online, right? So great to see that this has been digitized and put online for everyone.
Yeah.
Imagine more of that will be happening over time as well. There's huge archives, but it takes a lot of man hours to digitize this stuff, and you can only imagine how much there is behind
Right.
the closed doors that we haven't had access to yet.
Right. A lot of it's just the time and money to get it digitized, to back the effort, because it takes time.
All right, so there's 1942 Mauna Loa, just a little anniversary mention there, and that's it for this week, Dan. We want to say some mahalos.
Yeah.
Talk about some more questions.
Definitely. Do want to give our shout outs to everybody. Thank everybody that turned out today. We rely on viewers like you. Like, subscribe, share, all that stuff does help. Commenting after the video definitely helps. No, it's annoying, but it really does help the channel out. We don't have advertising budgets, so we rely on people like you. We also post on hawaiitracker.com, so I just got the latest volcano watch up on there. So if you want to check that out, we post everything there in chronological order, so you can kind of get the newest things that's going on. We want to thank our longtime supporters as well, including Kilauea's Bar and Grill, which has been with us for a while now. They have 2 locations, one in Pahoa, one in Orchid Land. The Orchid Land location is not easy to find. Like, I drove past it the first time. I was like, wait, that's it there. But it's definitely worth it. Indoor, outdoor dining, takeout options, all that stuff. Been a long-time supporter. They do some great dishes with some rather traditional dishes with some local takes on it. So definitely, if you're out here, check out Kilauea's Bar and Grill, either location, and we appreciate their longtime support. We did have a super chat come through. I want to thank Chris, who donated $20. Says, thank you, Philip and Dane. Your hard work is appreciated every week, and I appreciate the support there. We do have a couple questions that we didn't get to. Let's see. Liz asks, how does the current level compare to the level it was at before it drained out in 2018?
All right. Let me put up this graph that we put up a couple weeks ago. So this is the graph that on the left shows elevation above sea level. So down here at the very bottom is the collapse crater, post 2018 crater depth when it was filled with water was this elevation, right? And then we have date down here in the bottom, and we have 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024, right? So really what we're having right now, if you're asking what's happened so far, here we are, current, this red point right here, right? So if you're at, how far have we come up since let's try to put all the questions in a row here, right? How much has it risen since the beginning of the filling since 2018? It's come up from about 527 to where we are around 850 or so now, right? So it's over 1,000 feet, over 300 meters or so. That's both eruptions. Just this eruption, yeah, it's closer to 100 meters, 300 feet or so. Yeah, might be like 9 or something like that. Yeah, so that's about right, Janice, how much it's filled. So Liz, how much it's filled since 2018? That answer is about 1,000. So to kind of keep going on this, since I have this block up here, this graph up here, the next question always is how long till it gets to the next block, next clip up, and we can see here at the rate that we've calculated, which is the longer term rate, the slower rate, that would be by the end of the year, it should reach that next top of the next cliff. It's still the third inset crater. There's that one, and then further up, another crater level, and beyond that again and again. So the other question we often get is, how is it compared to 2018? Now, 2018, the lake high point was right around in there, right? Now, when we had the lava lake in 2018, it was in a much smaller, deep shaft. So it wasn't nearly as wide as the one is now. But when that crater first formed, there was lava at the bottom of it in 2011 down to around right in here. So 2018 or 8 to 18 lava lake actually varied from that depth all the way up to this depth right here. So we're in the range of where that lava lake used to be, near the bottom of the range where you couldn't see it from an overlook. So that's most of the questions. The last questions we often get is, how long will it take to overfill that innermost crater to caldera floor? That would be 4 years-ish. And how long to split out of the caldera? Well, that would be 5 years-ish. And that would be assuming an unchanging rate of about 3.2 cubic meters per second, which is reasonable based on our most recent information. All right, Dan, answer the hell out of that question.
Yeah, got it, I think. I'm looking for any last ones. Lots of conversations going on.
Yeah, for you guys who are wondering, this is our comment last week that Dane looked like he wasn't listening to what I was saying. It's because he's involved in all the conversations in the chat and at the same time, which I can't do that while we're talking at the same time. Yeah, just guess you guys are wondering what the dynamic is here behind the screen.
And every once in a while, I'll say I'll be running different audio channels, and I'll just hear Dane over it. I'm like, oh god, I just completely missed whatever he was trying to tell me. I was looking at like two things talking.
Yeah, so we're multitasking everything here between the two of us. Yeah, so yeah, forgive us if one of us is not reading everything or listening to it. That has to be.
Yeah, Bill asks if the graph should flatten out as the crater gets wider. If the volume says the flux rate is the same, yeah.
Yeah, that's basically what you're seeing in that plot there. Is it does flatten out? Yeah. So these values are taken from analysis of the DEM and how much volume it would take to reach certain elevations. Yeah. So it's you do see that, right? It's a little subtle, right? But it comes a little bit steeper, and it flattens out a little bit and a little bit. So it is like that.
All right. Well, I'm not seeing any more questions. How many cubic yards so far? I think that's in the update. Yeah. Approximately 66 million cubic yards, 18 billion gallons as of April 6th.
Thank you, Dane.
Yep. A little while ago, but in that ballpark still.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll get another update on that, I would imagine, next week or something.
Yep. All right. Well, I think that basically does it for us this week. We will be back next week, same time, same place, 5 p.m. Hawaii Standard Time, Facebook on the Hawaii Tracker group and on YouTube on Hawaii Pod. Definitely check us out again. And unless anything goes down, and then we'll go live with an update. Don't suspect anything right now, but you never know. All right, Phil, back to you.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. The outlook is still good for viewing. We don't expect any changes. Great time to come and view the eruption safely. A lot of stuff to look at. It's very, very different than what was happening 4 years ago, right? And this is kind of just a little prequel to next week is going to be the anniversary of the beginning of the 2018 eruption. It began on May 3rd. This time 4 years ago, crater floor was about to collapse, and it was the beginning of the sequence. So we're really in that era where we can revisit,
right?
Not with the intent of bringing up the trauma, right, to like have pain, but to just examine it once again, to kind of heal from it a little bit more, discuss it, right? So we'll break it up next week, and we'll maybe do a little bit at the end on 2018, and if anyone is too sensitive, they can check out for that part of it, perhaps.
Right.
Yeah, but that's coming up over the next 2 weeks here. We're going to be talking about 2018 a little bit more again and tying things back in. But really, it's a whole different ball game nowadays. And it's a total night and day. Everything's up in the summit, in the crater. You can come and visit it and come and see it. There's nothing to worry about as far as it getting to people.
Right.
So,
and we're with 2018 is always going to be talked about. It's going to be one of those eruptions that it stands out in people's minds, even more so than maybe 1955, 1960 did. Just it on the scale of it all is just legendary. That once in a century or more type eruption. So it's gonna get talked about, every year on the anniversary going forward, I would bet. Not gonna just slip. It was too big. It was too crazy. Just for people to let it go. Be it the people that went through it, or the people that didn't see anything about it and just finding it for maybe their first time, like the eruption footage. So yeah, it's going to be interesting for everybody for a long time to come. I feel.
Yeah. So we'll talk about more about that next week.
Yeah.
Until then, you guys, from HawaiiTracker.com, he's Dan DuPont. I'm Philip Ong. Aloha, everyone. We'll